what I want to do is just start here with sort of setting the context. If we, Paul sort of mentioned a bit of this in his presentation, but I want to sort of broaden this out a bit. If we look at the globe right now, the Earth, and we look around and we see all the trees, the birds, the insects, all that kind of stuff, we're only looking at about 10% of the biodiversity. Okay? 90% of the biodiversity is microbial. It's in the soil, it's in the oceans in the form of phytoplankton and so forth. So another way of thinking about this is if we stacked all that different speciation, all those species on top of each other in functional groups, and we put all the microbes here and we put them on the bottom, most of that pyramid is going to actually be microbial. Right? And if we focus just on that top piece right there, just on the top, and we drill down into that, what we see is at the base we have a bunch of microbial decomposers, things that are going to hang out and eat us when we die or eat our waste. And if we go up to the next layer, the green layer here, what we get are the photosynthesizers, the plants that we see all around us. But in the oceans, what we have the phytoplankton. And if we just take a breath, and we take a second breath, that second breath was brought to you by the microbial phytoplankton in the ocean. Right? Every second breath comes from microbes. But if we keep going up this pyramid, what we have are the herbivores. We would see cows and rabbits in the oceans. We would have manatees, that kind of stuff. The things that eat the photosynthetic plants and microbes. And if we go up again, we get into the carnivores, the omnivores. Right? And with us, at the very top of that pyramid, right, as the dominant, most powerful species this planet has ever seen. And this whole kind of pyramid structure we call an ecological pyramid or a web of life. And it's all about who eats what and what eats you. Okay? That's the relationship. That is the relationship that we have in these ecological pyramids. And I want to focus just for a second on the relationship between microbes and the plants. Right? Because there's quite a magical kind of world going on in this space. If we just start and we think about the sun, okay, the sun is pushing down all that solar energy, those photons bombarding the planet every day. And the plants are sitting there and they're going to pull that energy in, as well as pull some water up from the soil, pull some carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and they're going to breathe back oxygen. They're going to breathe out some water, right? But what they're going to do is they're going to take that photosynthetic, that energy from the sun, and they're going to make a sugar out of it. A simple sugar, a carbohydrate, the carbo-C and the H2O hydrate. And inside of that sugar is the sun's energy. It's chemically bound inside of that molecule. And they're going to send it throughout their body to make more of themselves. Right? They're going to make more of themselves with that, but they're going to send, in some cases, 50-60% of that photosynthetic energy, that carbohydrate, into the soil, into their roots. Okay? And if we move along, the next step here, this is a video. If you just take a second, just look at this video. You see the little shimmering globes, the dots? They just sort of sit there and shimmer. These are bacteria, right? Just from a soil sample that I've taken here just recently. And if we ask the question, remember, an ecological pyramid, what we need to ask is, what do the bacteria eat? And eventually, who eats them? That's the link. That's the link. We see that they like to eat simple sugars, fructose, glucose, fruit juices, amino acids, the kind of stuff that you go to the health food store and you want to pump up and lift weights. You get a whole concoction of a mix of amino acids which form proteins. Okay? And if we imagine just for a second that this is a root, and we think about that plant, what that plant's going to do is it's going to send that sugar down into its roots, and it's going to create a bunch of simple sugars, a bunch of amino acids, and it's going to simply squirt them out into the soil. Right? And who likes to eat those simple sugars and those amino acids? We got bacteria. Right? The bacteria come in, they're going to hang out where their food is. This is a buffet table for the microbes. This is a buffet table where they're going to hang out on that root surface. They're not going to be over here in the empty soil. They're going to be sitting right next to the plant because the plant's actually feeding them. feeding them what they want. Now, if we go to this next video here, this is actually a video from a forest just on the way to Guanajuato. It's about 30, 40 minutes away from here. The old growth forest that we see on the top of the mountains. And they're filled with mushrooms. You go there in the rainy season, there's mushrooms everywhere. And when Stamens was talking about the mycelium, when you look at the mycelium through a microscope, you actually see that the visible strands of white fungi you see on leaves and so forth are actually thousands and thousands of individual tubes. They're called hyphae, right? Individual tubes that look like this of all kinds of colors. And then we want to ask the question, well, what is it that they like to eat? What is it that the fungi like to eat? Well, they like to eat those sugars, amino acids, all that kind of stuff, but they're also really good at eating woody stuff. And of course, where would we go mushroom hunting? To the forest, right? So they eat the woody stuff. So if we go back to our root again, and we imagine a root going through the soil, and what it does is it's actually peeling off pieces of itself. Dead skin, let's call it, of the root. A little bit of woody material that's left behind, a trail. Where there is going to be that kind of lignin root material, there's also going to be the fungi, right? It's another addition to the buffet table, right? That's being created here. And if we also imagine that there are kinds of bacteria which we call nitrogen-fixing bacteria that form colonies, they actually embed themselves. They create little humps, if you will, right on the root. They hang out inside there, thousands, millions of these bacteria, these tiny little nodules in the roots, and they have the ability to take 78% of what we're currently breathing now, which is nitrogen, taking that nitrogen and putting it into what we call a reactive form. The nitrogen that, can you hear me? Great. The nitrogen that we're currently breathing, luckily, is not reactive. If it was, we'd be in trouble right now, okay? But in order to make it reactive and useful for plants and for the rest of us, these microbes are providing a huge service, pulling this out, sharing a little bit with the plant in exchange for some carbon. These are called mutualists or symbionts, right? There's an exchange that occurs between the plant and the bacterial community. Then we also have the fungi that Stamens talks about. And we have a kind called mycorrhizal. So the mycorrhizal are forming these associations in different ways, but what they're doing is going out and pulling out phosphorus and water and nitrogen and a bunch of other nutrients in exchange for sugars from the plant, right? Carbon from the plant. So there's a mutualistic symbiotic relationship between these microbes and the plants. Now what we've got here is we've got a collection of videos up there. The top left is an amoeba, very slow. It's called a naked amoeba. It's stripped bare, it's clean, it's out there in all its full glory, just oozing along. And then the second one is a flagellate. The bottom one, something called ciliate. Now all three, again, we want to ask that question, what do they eat? All three of these are eating bacteria. Okay, they eat bacteria. Okay, now if we go back to that plant root and we strip away those mutualists just for a moment, and we think about what's going on, all the arrows, the plant's giving away everything and not getting anything in return. It's surrounded by a bunch of freeloaders at this point. Just a bunch of freeloaders hanging out. So what we need to do is bring in those ciliates. Here are the green dots, the amoeba, so forth. We call them protozoa. Now at this point, I don't know how to put this, delicately, but most of us, I think, when we eat, we don't use everything. We don't use everything that we eat, right? We have a waste stream. And for a plant, luckily, plants can't eat live organisms, or else lying in grass would be a real perilous kind of thing for us, right? So they need to have us, which we are bags of nutrients, in some kind of form in which that plant can actually eat the nutrients that are in us. So think about these ciliates, amoeba, these protozoa. What they do is they eat the bacteria. And they have a waste stream, a microbial manure, a protozoa poo, as we call it, right? And that is available for the plants. The plants take that up. So there's an ecosystem relationship here that's occurring, an ecological mutualistic relationship. And if we just go one more step into this is a microscopic worm. And yes, they're all around us and on your skin right now as I speak. This is called a nematode. And this nematode is actually a kind of a nematode that eats bacteria. And it's pretty content right now. It's, slow. Usually these things are pretty fast. And as I mentioned, it eats bacteria, but there are many, many different types of species of nematodes out there. And some of them eat bacteria, but some eat fungi, some eat plants, some eat other nematodes, protozoa, all this kind of stuff. So when we come back into the plant root and we add in the nematodes, right? We add in the nematodes. What we now have are a whole bunch more microbial manures being produced, right? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to think about this just for a second and understand that this is a cycle, right? This is a cycle where the plant feeds the microbe feeds the plant feeds the microbe feeds the plant, to the point where we can't tell the difference between the plant and the microbial world in the soil. We don't know where the plant ends, and we don't know where the microbial world begins. They are in fact one in the soil. Right? They are one. Now, there's a famous writer, poet, incredible writer, poet, farmer in the United States, Wendell Berry. And he has this famous saying where he says, eating is an agricultural act. Meaning that every time we sit down at our plates and we decide on what food, how it's prepared, where it's grown, we're participating in farming. We're connected to farming. We endorse a certain type of farming and a certain way of dealing with the ecological environmental world, right? But if we look at this shot, scanning electron microscope shot of a leaf, and we see that there are spores embedded in that leaf, right? In that leaf. And here I've got a few leaves, right? A few leaves. And if I take one of those leaves, here it is. There it is. Here it is. Okay. All right. I'm doing more than just eating here, huh? What I think we're doing is we're now entering the picture of the microbial world. It's a form of communion with the natural world. And I use that word on purpose, right? To take it back, right? So we've got an entry, a connection, a deep connection through our eating with the microbial world. But it's more than that. Okay? If you count the cells in our bodies, each of us, you count the cells, 90% of them are microbial. 10 to 1. 10 microbial cells for one human. Now, our cells are much bigger than the microbial cells, right? Much bigger, but 10 to 1. Now, that's really incredible, but where it gets really, I think, stunning, Human Genome Project, 1990 to 2003, 13 years, over $1 billion, 13 years to figure out that the human body had 22,000 genes that are human. Right? Last couple of years, I'm going to talk about this in a second, our technology, our way of understanding the microbial world is just like going crazy. There's a revolution occurring right now. We've mapped out that there are over 2 million microbial genes in the average human body. Over 99% of the genetic material in your body is microbial. You're less than 1% human. You're less than 1% human. All right? Okay, so now I had a little technical difficulty. I'm a little bit farther in the presentation time-wise than I wanted to be, but usually I'd be about 10 minutes in at this point. Now, some research has just come out in the last couple of months. It says about, there it is. There's my 90. That about every 10 minutes, the average human body is shedding about 1.5 million microbial cells. Every 10 minutes, you are shedding 1.5 million microbial cells. There was a recent talk, a TED talk, Jonathan Eisen talked about how this is forming what we call a microbial cloud. I really encourage you to take a look at what he had to say about this. So let's imagine that cloud for a second. There you are, you're all out there shedding that cloud. But it's not just one of you, right? You're all doing it. And you're all breathing in each other's cloud. It's all landing on your skin. You're completely connected. We've been exchanging so much information over the last few hours. We're deeply connected through the unseen microbial world. So how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel to understand that it's not just you individually and it's not just me, right? It's we. I stand up here in front of you as we. I'm an ecosystem. So are you. Each one of you is a you all to me, right? Right? So we are them, they are us. Huh? Now, this is an incredible graphic here that some folks up in the public School of Public Health at Harvard, Dr. Sagata and Huttenhauer had sent me. And this comes out of some work over the last couple of years where folks have been able to use advanced genetic testing that I'll talk about in just a second. And they've come out with this sort of profile of what it looks like in a human being in terms of the ecosystem within and on us. Right? And what we're looking at here is a very high-level grouping of the microbes. There's actually over 10,000 species of bacteria and yeast and virus inside and on you, okay, that are essential to how you live. And this form of testing has only happened in the last few years. We are at the dawn of a revolution of understanding how the microbial world is everywhere and essential, and how it connects all life. All life is connected through this world. And this started in 2006, and we've had exponential growth of this technology, okay, to the point now where we're pulling out terabytes of data from people, right? And what this is leading us to is discoveries over the last 18 months about diseases associated with microbes in us and on us. Okay? Many diseases. Now you get people saying that what we're looking at is an ecosystem. We don't know human diseases that are not associated with the microbial world in us and on us until we actually research them. We have no idea. So we can say we don't know where the human ends and where the microbial world in us begins. We are one. Now, just quickly, let's take a second here and we'll think about how did we get here? Well, the planet's about 4.7 billion years. The first billion years was pretty hot, heavy, not a great place for life to emerge. And then about 3.5 billion years ago, we had the emergence of life. But not just any life, ancient bacteria. That was the life that existed on this planet for a couple of billion years. And they took the planet from an ammonia, sulfurous, hydrogen-filled, carbon dioxide kind of world and built up oxygen to the point where other forms of life could actually start to emerge. Right? And what we have is about a little over half a billion years ago, we had that ecological pyramid that we can start seeing now. We start to see it actually occur. Okay? The ecological pyramid starts getting built up a half a billion years ago. And then as Stamets talked about mass extinctions, right? We had the first mass extinction a little under a half a billion years ago. And what that means is 75% of the species that we see disappear. Right? 75% disappear. Then we had another, and another, and another, and another. Until 65 years ago, we had the last one. But scientists tell us that now we are in the early stages of the sixth. We are in the early stages of the sixth great mass extinction, which will roll out over the next couple of 100 years, which is a short period of time in terms of mass extinctions. Okay? This is Nicholas Copernicus. I don't know if you've heard of Nicholas Copernicus, the Copernican revolution. Before Copernicus, we thought, science, the Western world, thought that the Earth was the center of the universe. Nobody thinks that anymore, right? Nobody thinks that the Earth is the center of the universe. What we do is we know that the sun is the center of our solar system, right? But how many of us think that the human species is the most important species on this planet? That it is the center of the ecological web of life, right? Like, really think about that just for a second. Are humans more important? Do we regard them as more important? Right? And do we, by extension, regard the things that we make, our forms of organization, economics, religion, medicine, agriculture? Okay. Do we pull them into that inner circle, make them the center? Well, sure, yeah, what we've got right now is we've got discussions where we're trying to balance things out. The economy, jobs versus the environment, that kind of discussion. But does that go far enough? Is that really what the ecological world is based on, the laws of how ecosystems work? Aren't we standing as the most primal, dominant organism on the planet? Which we are, right? Aren't we standing on the top? But what we do is we are supported by that which is underneath of us. Right? So if we think about where we are in possibly the sixth great mass extinction, what happens to our life support system? Okay? So what I like to say is that I think that we're not dealing with a story here where we need to find a few species or a few people that can be heroic, that can push our world into a better place. What I think we're dealing with here is a story of transition. It's the natural world will carry on with or without us. But what microbes are telling us is that we're deeply connected to it. Each one of us is an ecosystem. Yes, we've ascended to great heights, but now what we're doing is we're being brought back down to earth. We're being given clay feet again, right? And it's whether or not we survive, whether or not we make it through the next couple of 100 years is about whether or not we change. Not that we change the earth to save it, but that we change. So when we think about rebirth, transformation, I'm going to do what you normally don't do, which is I'm not going to end this presentation because the story of transformation isn't ended. It remains to be seen.